In 193 AD, a Roman soldier stationed on the Syrian frontier needed to send money home to his mother in Alexandria. He could not carry silver across 1,000 miles of desert and mountain roads controlled by bandits. He could not trust a stranger with his savings. There were no banks. There was no postal money transfer. There was no system. Except there was. He walked to a merchant in the nearest town, handed over his coins, and received a small clay tablet with marks pressed into it. He sent the tablet home with a trusted traveler. His mother walked to a different merchant in Alexandria, a man who had never met the soldier, never seen his face, did not know his name, handed over the tablet, and received the equivalent amount in local currency. No coins crossed the desert. No value was lost. No name was recorded anywhere. This system had been running for over 500 years before that soldier used it. It was called the Argentarii network. And it worked on a principle that the inventors of Bitcoin would recognize immediately. Trust in the system, not in the people. What the Romans built was not just a money transfer service. It was the world's first decentralized financial network. And they built it without electricity, without computers, and without anyone being in charge. Here is how it actually worked. The argentarii were not banks. This distinction matters enormously. A bank holds your money. A bank is a building, a vault, an institution you can find and rob and regulate. Rome had no central financial authority, no equivalent of a federal reserve, no imperial treasury that ordinary people could access. The argentarii was something different. They were a network of private money changers, brokers, and financial intermediaries spread across every major city in the Roman world. From Londinium to Alexandria, from Carthage to Antioch, from the Rhine frontier to the Euphrates. Each argentarius operated independently. They were competitors, not partners. They had no shared ledger, no central headquarters, no common authority. And yet, the network functioned as if it were a single system. How? Because of something the Romans called fides. Fides is usually translated as faith or trust, but in the financial context, it meant something more specific and more powerful. It meant a reputation so established that breaking it was commercially equivalent to death. An argentarius who failed to honor a transaction, even once, even in a dispute, lost his fides. And an argentarius without fides had no business. The network policed itself, not through laws, through reputation. This is exactly what cryptocurrency advocates call a trustless system. A system where you do not need to trust any individual because the system itself enforces honesty. Rome built this with clay tablets and human memory. The mechanics were elegant. When a merchant in Rome needed to pay a supplier in Ephesus, a city on the other side of the Aegean Sea, he did not ship silver. Silver was heavy, expensive to transport, and attractive to pirates and bandits. Shipping it across the Mediterranean was a financial risk in itself. Instead, he went to an argentarius in Rome and deposited his silver. The argentarius issued him a document. In Latin, it was called a cheirographum, literally, a handwritten thing. Think of it as a signed certificate of deposit. It specified the amount, the currency, sometimes a date, sometimes a code word known only to the sender and receiver. The merchant sent the cheirographum to his supplier in Ephesus, by ship, by messenger, however documents traveled. The supplier took it to an argentarius in Ephesus. That argentarius paid out the equivalent amount in local currency. The two argentarii, one in Rome, one in Ephesus, then settled their mutual debts periodically. They tracked what they owed each other across dozens or hundreds of transactions and settled the net difference, often in goods rather than coin, at intervals that could be months apart. No value traveled across the sea, only information. This is not metaphorically similar to how Bitcoin works. It is structurally identical. Value recorded in a document, document transferred, document redeemed. Counterparties settle net positions. The Romans called it permutatio. We call it correspondent banking. The principle is unchanged after 2,000 years. But here is where it gets genuinely strange. The Roman system had a feature that Bitcoin spent years trying to achieve and still has not fully solved: privacy. When you send Bitcoin, the transaction is recorded on a public blockchain. Anyone can see it. The addresses are anonymous, but the transaction itself is permanent and visible. Governments, analysts, and hackers have become extremely good at tracing Bitcoin transactions back to real identities. The Roman chirographem left no public record. There was no ledger that anyone outside the two argentarii could inspect. There was no record that the emperor's tax collectors could subpoena. There was no database that a thief could steal. The transaction existed in two places: the document itself and the private accounts of the two argentarii. Roman financial privacy was so complete that the historian Richard Duncan Jones, after analyzing surviving papyri from Egypt, concluded that large portions of Roman commercial activity were essentially invisible to the imperial government. Roman merchants were moving money across the empire in amounts the emperor could not see, could not tax, and could not control. The imperial government tried repeatedly to regulate the argentarii. They imposed licensing requirements. They demanded records. They stationed officials near money-changing tables in the forum. It changed almost nothing. Because the system did not need any central point to function, there was nothing to shut down. Sound familiar? The Roman system had a second feature that modern fintech companies are still struggling to replicate: programmable money. A chirographem was not just a transfer instruction. It could contain conditions. Pay this amount to my agent Marcus only if he delivers the goods in good condition. Pay this amount only after the Ides of March. Pay this amount only if the ship arrives safely. And if the ship does not arrive, the obligation is void. These conditional payment instruments were called stipulationes. They were legally enforceable contracts embedded inside financial instruments. A merchant shipping olive oil from Spain to Ostia could structure the payment so that the money was only released when the cargo arrived intact. The argentarius in Ostia would physically inspect the delivery before paying out. This is what cryptocurrency developers today call smart contracts, self-executing financial agreements where payment is automatically triggered by conditions being met. The Ethereum blockchain launched in 2015 with smart contracts as its central innovation. It was treated as a revolutionary breakthrough in financial technology. Roman jurists had been writing legal opinions about conditional stipulationes since at least the 2nd century BC. The Roman innovation was not technological, it was conceptual. They understood that money is just information, and that information can carry conditions. This insight was then lost for approximately 1,500 years after the fall of Rome. Medieval banking rediscovered pieces of it, modern finance rediscovered more, and then Silicon Valley rediscovered the rest and called it disruptive. Now for the part that sounds completely insane. The Roman system handled international currency exchange with a sophistication that most countries did not achieve until the 19th century. The Roman Empire was not one currency. This is a common misconception. Rome minted the denarius as the primary silver coin, but across the empire, dozens of local currencies circulated simultaneously. Egyptian drachmas, Syrian tetradrachms, Greek statas, Celtic coinage on the northern frontiers. Each currency had a different silver content, different weight standards, different levels of debasement, depending on when and where it was minted. An argentarius, operating across multiple provinces, needed to track real-time exchange rates across a dozen currency pairs. He needed to know the current silver content of coins from 20 different mints. He needed to account for the fact that the denarius had been debased 17 times in the previous century, and that the official exchange rate bore no relationship to the actual metal value. What the Argentarii developed to solve this problem was a floating exchange rate system based on actual metal content rather than face value. They ignored what coins said they were worth. They weighed them, they assayed them, and they traded them at rates reflecting actual metal content. This is exactly what currency traders do today. The official exchange rate is one number. The real market rate, based on actual economic fundamentals, is often different. The Romans had forex traders 2,000 years before there was a forex market. Here is where the story takes a dark turn. The Roman financial system was so sophisticated, so efficient, so genuinely innovative, and it was systematically destroyed by the Roman government. Not in one dramatic moment, over 2 centuries. Gradually, incrementally, through a series of decisions that each seemed rational in isolation and were catastrophic in combination. It started with currency debasement. In the early empire, the denarius contained approximately 90% silver. By 268 AD, the reign of the Emperor Gallienus, it contained less than 2%. The imperial government had been secretly reducing the silver content for generations, keeping the face value the same while pocketing the difference. This was not a secret that could be kept. The Argentarii knew immediately. Their entire business was based on knowing the actual metal content of coins. When the denarius dropped below 50% silver, they started pricing it accordingly, charging more denarii for the same goods and services. The government called this price gouging. They issued the Edict of Maximum Prices in 301 AD under Diocletian, the ancient world's most comprehensive attempt at price controls. It listed maximum legal prices for hundreds of goods and services, including the fees Argentarii could charge. The penalty for charging more was death. The Argentarii simply stopped operating in official markets. They moved underground. They traded in foreign currency, in gold, in kind. They became invisible. The government had tried to regulate the decentralized network. The network routed around the regulation. This too sounds familiar. The consequences of destroying the financial network were worse than the problem it was meant to solve. When the Argentarii went underground or stopped operating, long-distance trade collapsed. Not because goods stopped being produced, because the mechanism for paying for them across long distances had been broken. A merchant in Gaul who wanted to buy Egyptian grain needed to physically transport silver to Egypt. Silver that weighed the same as the grain, cost as much to transport and guard, and attracted the same bandits. The transaction costs of trade exploded. Merchants stopped making long-distance trades that were marginally profitable. Trade routes that had operated for centuries went silent. The Roman economy had been running on the lubricant of the Argentari network without most people understanding that it was there. When it was removed, the machinery ceased. This is the economic phenomenon historians call the Third Century Crisis, a period of military instability, political chaos, and economic contraction that nearly destroyed the Roman Empire between 235 and 284 AD. Historians have spent 2 centuries arguing about what caused it. Part of the answer is armies and political instability. Part of it is plague. And part of it is that the most sophisticated financial network the ancient world had ever built was systematically dismantled by the people who benefited from it most, because they did not understand what it was. The government saw money changers at tables in the forum. They did not see the network. They never saw the network. The Argentari system did not die completely. It mutated. As the Western Roman Empire collapsed in the 5th century, the network, or what remained of it, migrated. Jewish merchants who had operated within the Argentarii system carried the practices into the medieval world. Syrian and Greek traders brought the knowledge of conditional payment instruments to the early Islamic financial system. Islamic banking, which developed sophisticated financial instruments in the 7th and 8th centuries, partly because Islamic law prohibited interest, drew directly on Roman commercial law. The Hawala system of money transfer, still used across the Middle East and South Asia today, operates on exactly the same principle as the Roman permutatio. Deposit money with a hawaladar in Dubai, receive a code. Your family member in Karachi goes to a different hawaladar, provides the code, receives equivalent local currency. The two hawaladars settle their mutual debts periodically. This is the chirographum. This is the argentarii network. This is the system that Roman soldiers were using to send money home from the Syrian frontier in 193 AD. It never died. It went underground. It migrated. It adapted to new legal and religious contexts. But the core principle, the insight that money is information, and information can move faster and more safely than metal, survived every empire that thought it had been eliminated. And then, in 2008, a person or group of people using the name Satoshi Nakamoto published a white paper proposing a decentralized digital currency based on cryptographic proof rather than trust in institutions. They called it Bitcoin. They thought they were inventing something new. The Roman argentarii system teaches 3 lessons that are as relevant today as they were 2,000 years ago. The first lesson: decentralized networks are more resilient than centralized institutions. Every attempt to control, regulate, or destroy the argentarii network made it stronger because there was no center to attack. It routed around damage, it adapted, it migrated, it survived every empire that outlawed it. The second lesson: governments destroy the financial systems they do not understand. Rome debased its currency, imposed price controls, and criminalized the intermediaries who made long-distance trade possible. The economy collapsed. The lesson was not learned. Every subsequent civilization has repeated the experiment with similar results. The third lesson: the fundamental insight behind all financial innovation is the same insight, rediscovered repeatedly across 2,000 years. Money is not metal. Money is not paper. Money is not digital tokens. Money is trust, encoded in a transferable form. The Roman argentarius, encoding trust in a clay tablet. The medieval merchant, encoding trust in a bill of exchange. The modern bank, encoding trust in a wire transfer. Satoshi Nakamoto, encoding trust in a cryptographic blockchain. Different technologies, identical insight. The Roman who developed the chirographum system did not know he was inventing the ancestor of Bitcoin. He was solving a practical problem. How do you move value across space without moving matter? The answer he found still powers the global financial system today. Every international wire transfer, every correspondent banking relationship, every smart contract on every blockchain descends directly from those clay tablets pressed in Roman markets 2,000 years ago. They built the future without knowing it. That is what great innovations always do.